Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another video. I've been in kind of a slump both in terms of reading and filming. That's why I haven't been doing any of this. But I really wanted to come here and really quickly talk to you guys about my top 10 books of last year, 2024. I know it's a little late to talk about my top books 2024, but it's better late than never. Yeah, so I actually updated my reading journal a few days back, and that's what kind of prompted me into wanting to do this video as well. So I have my top 10 books, and then I also have a bunch of honorable mentions. So I thought let's get started and talk about that. So starting off with some honorable mentions just quickly, one of them is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. So this is actually the entire series that I mean when I put this book in there. So this series was not really a 5-star for me, like individually, but the whole series put together really itched something in my brain. You know, it was like the perfect combination of like desert vibes and fantasy vibes, and I really enjoyed it. Plot, the character development, everything was really well done. The only thing that I feel like kind of puts it not in my top 10 and just in the honorable mentions was that some parts of the plots were, I feel like, rushed or not written in a bit more relaxed manner, where the reader could actually appreciate that thing happening. But overall, still I feel like Sabaa Tahir did a very good job with this entire series, and I would definitely recommend this to everyone. Next up is Stephen King. We have Dolores Claiborne. This is one of his mystery novels. I just do not know how to explain this book because it's not horror by Stephen King, it's a mystery book, but I was scared the entire time. The topic of this book is just so like not unrealistically, but like so horrifyingly scary that's what made this book really gripping, is what I would say. It was a very gripping book in terms of fear. So basically in this book we're following Dolores Claiborne, who is an elderly woman now, but she's basically gone to the police station to confess for the murder that she did of her husband for whatever reasons. I'm not gonna tell because that'll be a spoiler, but I not constantly, but there are times when I still think about this book. I read this early on in the year, but I still definitely think about this book, think about the characters, and just how awful life is for some people and how strong some people have to be in order to protect themselves as well as their loved ones from such horrible things from happening to them. And if you guys don't know Gerald's Game, which is another story by Stephen King, which has been converted into a Netflix movie, that book and this book are kind of connected to each other through the solar eclipse that happened in 47 or 57, I do not know, but we do get a glimpse of the main character in that book as well. And I have seen the movie, I really enjoyed that movie, and I definitely want to read that book as well. But yeah, I will say this book is not for the faint-hearted. It definitely isn't. You know, it's not a happy book, but it's definitely a great read. This entire book is written in the form of a single interview that Dolores gives to the police officers, kind of a confession, and it has no chapters. So I feel like this is a great reading experience that way as well. Okay, I have to fasten this up because I'm just on honorable mentions right now. But yeah, next up I have Sita by Amish. This is the second book in his Ramchandra series, and the entire series is great, really is. I would want to include the other books in them as well. Yeah, when I pick up this book, I definitely mean the entire series. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book because I did not expect it to be what it was. You know, like Sita is such a strong character, such a strong woman. I do not know much about the mythology, so I was not expecting that, and reading this was definitely a pleasant surprise, and I really enjoyed that. And the entire series is just great. And actually, you know what, I think I will mention Ravan as well as in this entire series, because Ravan too was a pleasant surprise, because I feel like in this entire series Ravan was my favorite character. Ravan and Kumkaran were my favorite characters, and that entire series is just so well done. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And then lastly in my honorable mentions is another Stephen King, and that is The Dead Zone. So this is the first book in our Castle Rock series, or basically what I want to call it. And I have included this book in this list just because it's such an interesting book. The plot and the entire concept of that book is so interesting. Basically, our main character, he kind of has a really near-death experience as a kid, which kind of invokes this sort of dead zone in his brain where he doesn't remember a lot of things, but he kind of gets premonitions for things that are going to happen later on, but they're very weak or just really small premonitions. And then later on, when he is grown up, he again gets into a near-death experience, and that is when that dead zone really just expands and takes over his brain. And that entire book was honestly a fever dream. I still think about that book, and I just do not remember anything else other than just reading that book at that time. It was such a great experience. The book also has another plot of the Castle Rock Strangler, and how our main character, who has or is infected by the dead zone, whatever you want to call it, kind of helps the people of Castle Rock to find this Castle Rock Strangler, who is basically a serial killer. And it was just a great book. I was scared when I was reading it. I couldn't put the book down. I wanted to know what's happening next. I was scared for our characters. I was scared of our characters. It was a great read. Honestly, Stephen King is definitely one of my favorite authors, and that was one of my favorite reads by him. Okay, now that we're done with the honorable mentions, let's get started with the top 10 books. I need to just open my list. So on number 10 we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. This was her new release of 2024, and I just ate this book up. Honestly, it's a romance book, but it didn't feel like typical TikTok rom-com, which is like the norm these days. This was such a good book. When I was reading it, I did not want it to end, so I was forcefully reading it slower, and I was just enjoying it so much. So in this book, we follow our two main characters, I think Daphne and Miles. Daphne is engaged to a guy, and Miles is dating a girl who are both best friends. And then Daphne's fiance basically leaves her for that best friend, and at the end it's just Daphne and Miles left alone, and they kind of are unexpectedly just forced into this roommate situationship, and they're both obviously grieving for their own relationships that have ended, and they're kind of trying to be there for each other while at the same time wanting someone to be there for them, because they're also going through the same things. And I just love this book so much. Daphne was a very real character, and Miles, again, a very real character, and it was just a wholesome character. Like, the things that Miles would do, the things that Miles would say, it was just perfect. And Daphne and Miles as a couple was perfect, because there's literally a scene in this book, I don't want to give a spoiler, but like, this book really shows the importance of first becoming friends before getting into a relationship. And I think that this book really showed that perfectly, and I just loved it. Like I said, I think this and Book Lovers is definitely my favorite books by Emily Henry, definitely. Next up at number 9 we have Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. Honestly, Frederick Bachman I think is also going to become one of my favorite authors, because I've loved all of the books that I've read so far by him. Previously I had read A Man Called Ove by him, which was a very sad book. So I was kind of expecting similar vibes from this, but I was honestly really surprised, because it's not. This is a very funny book. Like, this book basically follows a bunch of people who are at a open house, and then there's this guy who's robbing the bank across the street, which doesn't go the way he was hoping it to go. So he runs across the street, enters into this apartment listing, and keeps all of these people hostage. And it's just so funny. This book is crazy, it's funny. You see all of our characters who are all crazy, but are all going through their own issues, their own problems, and how they're trying to cope up with them, and how the situation that has put them in a kind of not near-death experience, but like a kind of weird experience, a kind of once-in-a-lifetime experience, and it's kind of getting them to reassess their life and reassess their situations and their choices and all that stuff. And I just really love this book because it was funny, but at the same time being so meaningful. Like, there are quotes in this book which are just beautiful. The last page of this book is, I think, the best example of Frederick Bachman's writing. I'll probably add a photo of it here somewhere, maybe, but I just, really enjoyed this book, and I do recommend this to everyone because, like I said, it's meaningful, but at the same time it's not as heavy as A Man Called Ove or other books. It's not heavy. You can read this whenever you want to read, because it's like a light book but still meaningful. Now, completely opposite of that, A book that's not light and not funny, we have at number 8, The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. I'm honestly kind of embarrassed I didn't read this before, but I'm glad I did pick this up, and I was devastated. I really was. This book basically follows the two main characters. Well, not two main characters, but our main character who is in Kabul. I think Kabul. They're in Afghanistan. Our main character is basically telling his story of his childhood when he was in Afghanistan and how his housekeeper's son Hassan was his great friend, but because there was like this divide between them in terms of like, I think, caste and just societal differences that the two boys had, that when they grew up it kind of deepened, and then a bunch of stuff happened which I'm not gonna tell, and I don't even want to think about that because it was so heartbreaking. And honestly, I was a bit pissed at our main character for doing the things that he did, but I wouldn't blame him. He was born in Afghanistan during the war in 1975. You wouldn't have the best moral characters that time. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, I don't want to say anything controversial, but yeah, the guy was a little fucked up, and he did a few fucked up things, and that in turn led to a lot of really sad things happening for a lot of people. But yeah, this was definitely like an experience, this book. A very, very heavy book. I would recommend this to people, but I would also say please check the trigger warnings before you get to this, because in case there are some things that you really do not want to read about which are there in this book, I would really suggest you to not pick this book up. It's a little heavy, but at the same time, the writing, the character Hassan, there's just things that are close to my heart. Honestly, I would adopt Hassan if I could. I would, and I would keep him safe for the rest of his life. I really would, but I don't know. Next up at number 7 is a book I read quite early in the year. I read this in February actually, but I still think about it, and it's Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This is her memoir, and I honestly only picked this book up because of the cover. I didn't think I would enjoy it because it's a memoir. I don't really read non-fiction, and I wasn't really expecting much from it, but I did pick it up and I was surprised. If you guys don't realize, this entire video is about books that just surprised me. That's how they became 5-star reads for me. But yeah, this book basically follows Dolly Alderton through her 20s, I think, where she's going to college and her job and all those things. First all school, then college and job, and it's kind of like just every few chapters it gives like a list of stuff that she's learned at this age. It feels boring, like me telling you this, like I'm just reading about her life. It might be boring, but it's really not. It's so captivating, this book. I do have a few things underlined as well. It's just such relatable quotes in some of them. For example, if you feel exhausted by people, it's because you're willingly playing the martyr to make them like you. It's your problem, not theirs. I mean, it's just absolutely everyone is dysfunctional on some level, but a lot of people can function dysfunctionally. And then randomly there'll be like general just sort of advices like, don't eat sugar every day. Sugar turns everything on the outside and inside of your body to shit. 3 liters of water makes everything work properly. A glass of red wine is medicine. Like it's just a great book. Like this entire page is underlined by me, which is basically, the chapter says 28 lessons learned in 28 years. I literally dog-eared this page because I was like, I need to learn these things. Her life was so funny yet so kind of sad, but at the same time inspiring because of how she got up from certain heartbreaks or certain bad luck, and made this list for all of us to, you know, kind of adhere to and maybe have a more happier life. I don't know. Like this line I feel like is so nice. It says, I had spread myself like the last teaspoon of Marmite across the width of as many lives as possible. I told her that I gave almost all of my energy away to other people when no one had asked it of me. We had stopped playing at being grown-ups and accidentally become grown-ups. Like, I don't know, I could honestly quote this book for the rest of this video, but no, I'm gonna stop right there and I'm gonna just say, you need to pick this book up. No matter what your age is, you need to pick up this book and you will definitely enjoy it. Dolly Alderton, I really love her writing style and I really want to read more by her as well. I haven't yet, but I will definitely moving forward. Moving on, we have at number 6, Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I literally only picked up this book because I saw a couple of people online recommending this book if you like Fleabag, and I was like, yes, Yes, me, yes, I will get this book. And honestly, it was like, at the same time, not like Fleabag. Like, obviously, the plot is quite different, but the entire vibe of the story is very similar to Fleabag. Like, it's funny and light, but still at times you just get struck by emotions and you just get struck by, oh my god, what is happening to them, you know? And still, overall, it's just a complete masterpiece. That is what this book is, just like Fleabag. Yeah. The plot is obviously different. We have our main character who is suffering from some mental illness which is not named in this book, and I feel like which kind of really adds to the intrigue of it. So yeah, she suffered from mental illness from quite a young age, and she's living in a family with her sister, her mother, and her father. But her mother is not really the most warm mother, and she kind of just plays off her mental illness as just nothing. It's like just a phase, you know. But her father's there for her, and you're seeing her grow up with this mental illness and how she meets someone, gets married with someone, but at the end of the day that illness still is like a huge part of her and just prevails her life. Yeah, honestly, it was devastating to read in that terms, but it was also at times so funny, and the relationship that she had with her siblings and her father was just so heartwarming. I really liked this book. Like, when I was reading it, I just did not want to put the book down. I was feeling bad for her, but I was also laughing with her, I was also crying with her, and I just really enjoyed this book so much. And I would recommend this to everyone, whether or not you like Fleabag. I think you will really enjoy this book. Okay, now at number 5 we have Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I'm not gonna say much about this because literally the last video on my channel is the entire Harry Potter reading vlog, so please go and watch that video if you want to know more about the series and my thoughts about the series. But yeah, spoiler alert, I love it, and this is my favorite book out of the entire series. It's not a surprise. This is not a surprise. It just had to. It had to be here in this list, no matter what. Moving ahead at number 4, we have Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. If you don't know Jennifer Saint, she basically writes Greek mythology stories from the woman's point of view, and I just really love all of her books. And this is my favorite book of hers. So this book basically follows Ariadne, which is a character in the Greek mythology, but I feel like a character that is very easily forgotten or just left out of the entire story. But the story around her, the things that happen around her, are so crucial for the actual Greek mythology. It's crazy. I did not know anything about Ariadne either before I read this book, and I know quite a lot about Greek mythology before this as well, but reading this book made me realize she's such an important character. Her story, everything that happens to her, happens because of her, is such a major plot point. No, I don't want to say plot point, but like one of the major things that a driving force into the story and the timelines, the Greek mythology. But again, it's something that's not really talked much about when you talk about Greek mythology, and I just really loved it. I loved this book a lot. I don't want to say much about this. Basically, if you guys know the story about the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, that's all her story. Okay, the Minotaur was Ariadne's brother, and the man that she fell in love with was the one who was kind of trapped in the labyrinth, and she betrays her family by telling the guy, who's I think the Prince of Athens, to how to come out of the labyrinth and basically defeat the Minotaur. And once she does that, she kind of has to abandon her house because she has betrayed her family, and she ends up on this island, which becomes like her home for the rest of her life. And she comes across different Greek gods in her entire life process, and I just loved this book, and I really hope there is like a movie adaptation of this, because it would be amazing. Really, I loved this book a lot, and I would definitely recommend this book to everyone. If you're interested in if you're interested in Greek mythology, I would definitely recommend picking this book up, because it's not a story that's much talked about, so it's not like the repetition of the same story again and again, but through different people and different people's words. It feels different, feels new. Then at number 3, so we reached the top 3, and at number 3 I'm gonna cheat a little bit. So I have this book, which is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson at this point, but I actually mean the entire series, because the entire series is a 5-star, 6-star series for me. I really do not know how to explain it. I have one reading vlog on my channel where I read the first book, so you guys can go and watch that to get a little bit of an understanding of what the series actually is about. Talking about this book, the second book or the third book, I cannot talk about them because then it'll just be spoilers. But yeah, this book basically follows our main character Vin, who is kind of like a part of the slave community, but she has powers, the magical powers that the nobility people have, because she is a bastard, basically, you want to call it. And this entire crew of people just like her are trying to come together and overthrow the king, basically. And that just leads to a ton of events which are just crazy, and just cannot even imagine how Brandon Sanderson thought about all of this. It was really good. The characters in this series are to die for. I loved each and every one of those characters, and I really want to get into the Miss Bond Era 2 series, because I've heard people say that those characters are even more likable and even more like loved by fans as compared to the characters of this first series, and I just cannot imagine how that's possible, but I want to know more about it. But yeah, that's at number 3, the entire Mist Bond series. And honestly, if you want to get into Brandon Sanderson, this is a great position, a great place to get into Mist Bond's Era 1. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who wants to get into adult fantasy and a bit more epic fantasy. This is a great place to start, I think. Okay, now coming to number 2 is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. So before this, I had read The Nightingale, and I felt like I could not read a better book than this until I read this book, and I was sobbing my eyes out. Like, I cannot even explain to you what this book did to my brain. It altered my, when people say that this thing altered that brain chemistry, this book altered my brain chemistry. And I don't know if it's in a good way or a bad way, because this book is sad. It's dark and it's sad. Okay, again, I would suggest please look at the trigger warnings before picking up this book, but I would definitely ask people to pick up this book because it's just such a beautiful book. It's beautiful. Okay, despite all of the dark topics, it's a beautiful book. Okay, so basically in this book we follow our main character Lenny, whose father has come back from a war, and he's just not the same anymore, and their family keeps shifting from place to place, trying to find a place where her father can be the man that he was before and just be stable. But he's not able to find that until one day his father's old buddy, he sends him a letter that I have this land up in Alaska, I am dead or I am dying, and I want to give that land up to you. And his father just feels like going up to Alaska would be the best thing for their family, because he feels like that's where he could be his best self and therefore be there for the family in the best way possible. So they shift to Alaska, much to Lenny's disapproval, obviously, but they do end up shifting there, and it seems like a beautiful place. It's dangerous. It's like Alaska is written in such a interesting way. It's like it's deadly but beautiful. And that's exactly what I think is similar to her own family relationships, because it's just difficult, and it's scary, and it's dangerous, and it's just a lot of things. But her relationship with her mother is just so good. It's not your very general mother-daughter relationship. It's more of like a comrade relationship because of the things that they're going through, and I just really enjoyed this book. I mean, this book has a special place in my heart. I cannot explain it in any other way other than it's a book about survival of every form, survival of human beings in a treacherous environment, a treacherous climate, which is also in turn beautiful, as well as the struggles of the woman in this family because of the treacherous relationship that they have with the man of the family. It's just, this book is beautiful. It really highlights that concept of beautiful things can be so dangerous, like nature is so beautiful, but when it comes to it, it's kind of wild, and it's dangerous, and it's, yeah, basically I'm saying the word dangerous a lot, but that's what this book is. It's about survival in every aspect, and I would recommend this to every single person, this, especially women, especially girls and women. They need to pick this book up because I feel like it's an important book. Yeah, that's how I was put it. This is an important book, and everyone should read this book. Now we're going to move on to my number 1 book of last year. It's another book that I read quite early in the year, but still a book that I think about constantly, and that is Death's End by Cixin Liu. This is the last book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past series, and it's a mind-blowing series. If you guys don't know, this is a sci-fi series where in the first book a human civilization kind of has a contact with an alien civilization. It kind of starts off this entire series of events where humanity is kind of just preparing for an alien invasion that's going to be like 4 centuries in the future, and this entire series is 4 centuries long. It is so fascinating, so interesting, and this book specifically, I mean, when I read this book, when I was reading this book, and when I finished this book, I just could not believe that a person, a human being of this century sat down and wrote this. Like, this person actually thought about all this happening. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about that this book exists. This book, it's like, I cannot explain. Obviously, I cannot tell you what the plot point of this book is because it's a third book. I do not want to give any spoilers. What little intro that I gave was about the first book, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But this book, this is like the best sci-fi ever written. I do not read much of sci-fi, but even if I did, I'm pretty sure this was like the best sci-fi ever written because it's just crazy. The ideologies, the theories, the everything. It's just crazy, and I loved it. I love me some crazy sci-fi. I loved it. And the only thing I can say is read it. Read the entire series and don't give a lot of gaps between the books. Read them back to back, and it would be the best experience you will ever have. That's a guarantee. Actually, not a guarantee, but like, yeah, it's a guarantee. Who's it hurting? There is a Netflix series out for the first book, and I don't like it. The Netflix series, I'm just sorry. This series is a series which just cannot be visualized and cannot be made into like a movie or it just cannot. This book was written in the mind of Cixin Liu, and it can only be recreated in the mind of those readers. That's it. Because the things in this book, we don't know how those things look like. We don't know how these things look like. How the hell are we going to make a movie out of it? And I just, again, something that I can talk about for a very long time, but I'm not going to. And I'm going to stop right here. And yeah, those were the top 10 books and a few honorable mentions of all the books that I read in 2024. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys found some good recommendations, because honestly, I would recommend each and every book that I mentioned in this video. I would recommend it to you guys, and if you guys have read them, please let me know down below what you thought about them. If you liked it, if you hated it. If you hated it, don't tell me maybe, but if you liked it, please let me know. And if you guys have more recommendations similar to these which you think that I would really love, please let me know. Honestly, I would love to read more books like these because I just had a great time. 2024 was a great reading year. I didn't give you any stats. Wow, I think I read 59 books last year, and these were like top 10, top 15, which I think is a very good ratio. And all the other books I read last year were also great rates. Like, I had very few DNFs, very few what the hell I just read kind of books, and it was just a great reading year. And I hope you guys did too, and I hope this new year is another great reading experience for all of you guys. And yeah, happy new year, and I will see you guys again very, very soon.